You're watching Talking About Orcs.
In this episode of Talking About Orcs, we're going to be going over my thoughts on Codex Tyranids. Yes, I've been through the Codex, and here are my thoughts on what we're going to have to do as orcs to beat the bugs. There's two important things that I want to note right away that I think are very important. First and foremost, there's nothing in the Codex over toughness 6. What does that mean? It means two things. One, the boys can wound everything in the Codex. And two, Ludas will be wounding on 3s at the very least. So the lack of anything like toughness 8, like a Wraith Lord, really makes a big difference to orcs, simply because, as I said, we can wound everything in the Codex. So weight, volume of attacks is definitely going to be on our side. And even with 5 and 6 wounds each and 3+ saves, you're still going to make them fail a lot. The other thing is, of course, the lack of the instant death immunity that was lost with Synapse. So the warriors and zoanthropes and other lower toughness multi-wound models are going to be victims of rockets and power claws very easily. So anything that's not a monstrous creature with toughness 6, your power claws are going to just rock. Same with... Actually, power claws are just going to rock in general, because there's almost no invulnerable saves in the Codex. I think there's like 2 models with invulnerable saves, the Swarm Lord and the Zoanthropes, and that's it. So your power claws are going to be very important. And considering that orcs field more power claws than anybody, that could actually be quite scary for the Tyranid players. So let's talk about some of the other things that I noticed. Let's see. Lots of leadership and morale tests are made by the Tyranid opponent in this Codex. And it's very important when you're playing against Tyranids to know which one it is, if you're being forced to make a leadership check or a morale check. The difference, of course, is that with morale checks, you get rerolls with your boss balls. With leadership checks, not so much. However, the couple of important ones, there are a couple of them, the leadership checks, that are specifically not affecting fearless units. So large units of boys will not be affected by some of the leadership checks, even though they normally would be. So, which is another important, or another good thing for the orc player. So keep an eye on your Tyranid opponent. Make sure you know the difference between a leadership and morale check for each of his powers. As I said, it is important to know. Transports, I think transports are going to be very good against Tyranids. They have gained a little bit of ranged anti-vehicle firepower, but not a lot. The Hive Guard, which is probably their best anti-transport, is only 24-inch range, which is, of course, less than your assault range with their power of war and trucks. So that's not a big threat. The heavy venom cannons and the venom cannons, they have halfway decent range, but they're blasts, so which they can scatter, so they're not going to be completely reliable to hit, especially trucks, especially if you're using your small trucks, like I do. So your there's still not a whole, and the zoanthropes again are only 18-inch range. If they shoot at one of your vehicles, they will most likely blow it up. But that's fine, because then they're just going to die, so that's a 1-to-1 trade-off. It's not too bad. So there's still not a significant amount of ranged firepower for transports in the Tyranid Codex. So I think some speed, some trucks, some battle wagons will definitely be a major advantage for you against Tyranids. Now, it's going to be important to control the assaults. Not so much as other things, because these things don't have a lot of attacks. Even the big nasty guys don't have a lot of attacks. 4 and 5 attacks, kill 4 or 5 orcs, and then you've got 15 to retaliate with. So it's not going to be that bad if you don't assault. So they do, however, have a lot of medium range blast templates. Barb Stranglers are going to be very annoying, especially if they have a lot of spores that drop down with barb stranglers. That could be a lot of big templates every turn. So that could be a problem. But they're only medium range, 36 inches. So they're not going to be a big, huge threat. So let's talk about a couple individual models that stuck out at me. One was the Parasite of Mortrex. He's the guy that can turn outflankers into Ripper bases. Fortunately for Orks, there's not going to be a whole lot of threat from him because they're too big outflank. He only affects infantry, so Death Coppers are not going to be affected by him. And Snickrod is not going to be affected by him because Snickrod does not outflank. He ambushes. Completely different role, not affected by the Parasite. So the only time that you're going to have to worry about that is if you're outflanking with normal commandos, which is really cool. And the Swarm Lord is going to be kind of annoying because he's going to be hitting on 5s, unless you're using knobs with a War Banner. So you might want to consider shooting him. He doesn't have a lot of attacks. He only has 4 attacks. So that's only 4 or 5 dead Orks a turn. So he'll whittle down of boys eventually, but with 5 wounds and toughness 6 and only a 3+ save, it'll be a good fight. As far as that's the only real 2 units that came out at me. The only units with greater than strength 8 or better for instant death on your knobs is going to be the Carnifex and the named Carnifex Old One Eye. However, I honestly don't think you're going to see those often enough to worry about. I think the Carnifexes are just not going to be taken very often over things like the Trigon. But then those are only strength 6, so you're not going to be instant death. They're not going to be instant killing knobs. So knobs, are, with their high, especially with knobs having their high strength, you use big choppas and power claws, and of course the poison pain boy. There's going to be a lot of wounds on those monstrous creatures from knobs. And, of course, most of the monster creatures are also going to be lower initiative. So that really is also going to help. Like the Trigon's initiative 4, but things like the Turvagon is only initiative 1. He's got 6 wounds, initiative 1, the knobs are going to rock him. So another unit, the most annoying unit, I think, and you're probably going to see it a lot, is the Turvagon, the guy that poops out gaunts every turn. He is going to be quite annoying because he's going to be able to replenish those gaunts, while you will not be able to replenish your boys, unfortunately. And gaunts versus boys is always a good fight. So that's something that you probably should be a high priority over anything else, is the Turvagon. And as I said, you're probably going to see the Turvagon a lot in competitive play. So I think, there's not a whole lot of other units that scares me. Acid Blood could suck against boys, but you're not going to see that often. It's only on like the Broodlord and the Hive Tyrant. Venom cannons don't have a penalty for open top vehicles, but since they're blast and only a 36-inch range, they're not going to be that big of a threat. The Moloch could suck depending on how the rulings come out. So right now it's not clear if they can actually come up under the units or not. Strength 6 AP2 hits on a big template, that could really hurt. Fortunately, it's only 3 times a turn. I think the Barb Stranglers are much more threatening to Orks than a Moloch. But you'll probably see a lot of Moloch, so that's okay. You're not going to see. Moloch is initiative 4 still, so he'll go first, but only 3 attacks and weapon skill 3. So the boys, even after Moloch comes back up, the surviving boys are just going to own him. So in general, I don't think there's a whole lot you have to worry about when fighting the new Tyranids. Use your boys effectively, control assaults, transports are your friends, and the one thing you do have to, I think another thing you have to worry about is Gaunts with Devourers coming down in spores, because that's 60 shots at strength 4, and that could put a lot of hurt on your boys. Even with a KFF, that's still 10 dead Orks on average. So kind of, if your opponent's running that, kind of plan for it. Watch out those spores. I think the spores is one of the coolest things in the Codex, and I expect to see a lot of those as well. But Gaunts with Devourers and spores could be a bad thing. Probably even more so than a lot of the monstrous creatures. So I think that covers my initial impressions on the Tyranid Codex. Orks, I think, are going to do very well against them in general, and that should do it for this episode of Talking About Orks.